Hello and welcome back. First and foremost, I apologise for my voice. I've been ill recently and I'm still recovering. However, I've just received this and I'm very eager to get this opened and take a look at it. So, without further ado, today we are going to be looking at the Transformers Studio Series, Transformers the movie Soundwave from Hasbro. This is part of the Studio Series line of figures, which are representations of the characters as they appeared in their respective movies. So this is Soundwave as he appeared in that 1986 animated film. He also comes with Buzzsaw, Laserbeak and Ravage. So here we have the figure within the box. It's a leader class figure, so it's in that bigger box. But I will admit that he does look really small in this box, and holding it feels more like you're paying for the box than you are the figure. I know that with the class sizes and price points that cost doesn't necessarily equate to size. It often equates to the figure, the articulation, and the accessories. So I understand with this figure, he's a little bit smaller, but he's got some new molding, some new articulation, along with a number of accessories, including 3 other figures. So that's understandable from a price point. However, I do feel that if you have a figure like this on the toy shelf and you are a random nobody who's picking this up for, especially if you're picking up for a present for a kid or something like that, you look at this on the shelf and, you see this at the £55 price mark these are now, and you see it next to, say, Onyx Prime or Megatronus or something, which is same price point, same size, but a much bigger presence within the box. I know I would be more inclined to grab the one which looks bigger, more bang for your buck. As a collector, I understand that as I said, the price doesn't always equate to size, but rather everything else that goes with it. I just feel that figures like this, which are a little smaller, they do look out of place in these boxes, and they're harder. For me, they feel like they would be a harder sell for someone who doesn't collect or isn't aware of the class sizes. And while I certainly appreciate all of the accessories this includes, I do feel that maybe Hasbro needs to start considering a additional line between the £35 price point and that £55 price point, maybe at the 45, where something like you could have Soundwave and maybe just one of the cassette bots. It would, but that's just me. Anyway, without further ado, let's get to looking at the figure. So this is the figure within the box. It's that standard Studio Series packaging we're now familiar with. That's our top. The bottom is legal and barcode. The front has that window box packaging, allowing us to see the figure and the cassettes within inside. We get some really nice artwork of Soundwave and the 3 cassette bots. That moves around to the side to give us a view of the battle-ravaged Autobot city. I think that's a new image for 26. We get the additional artwork of Soundwave around the side. And then on the back we get our legal, we get a product shot along with products for the additional cassette bots. We then get a brief bio and a picture of the figure as he appeared in that movie. Although it almost appears that this figure still was taken off maybe YouTube or something like that. I don't know. It seems a little weird to have the play button showing on the box, but it is what it is. It's not going to harm the figure in any way. So let's get this figure opened and take a look at it within. let's move the packaging to one side. Get our instructions out. And then we have the figure on that standard inlay with the bluish background and the hexagonal shapes and the various symbols. Of course, it's tied in with all of those god's awful cable ties. So let's get those cut. Again, I apologise for the sniffles of my voice. I am still recovering. One thing, and this sounds really petty, I know, that is bothering me with these new line of figures is that all of the accessories are coming in a plastic bag rather than that tissue paper. I like that tissue paper. It was a great way of storing the accessories, keeping it themed, and, you know, being environmentally friendly. Yeah, it seems like just a couple of years ago, Hasbro were determined to become environmentally sound in their packaging and everything else, and instead we just get them going backwards now, which is a real shame. Okay, let's just open those and put those out to one side. And we can get rid of everything within. These cable ties annoy me so much. And it wouldn't be one of my videos if I wasn't complaining about the cable ties now, would it? There we go. Let's bring everything in. Here we have our figure straight out of the packaging, and it is a really nice looking Soundwave. I love the blue on this. It's a dark blue, but it still feels very much like Soundwave's colours. You can see we got some nice subtle moulding details. Something I do like that Hasbro are doing with these Studio Series 386 toy lines now is removing all of those moulding details they had for left over from the War for Cybertron figures and things like that. While they look nice, this is definitely a lot more screen accurate, and I think if you wanted the figure with all of that molded detail, we have those options in the mainline series figures, so it's nice to have both options available to us. Some nice silver paints for the play, stop and go symbols. I will say the one thing that always does bother me is that we get the overlay on the back, so he's got two sets of buttons, which is always disappointing. I much prefer the Transformers when they're as screen accurate as possible, so yeah, perhaps leaving those as our buttons or something like that would have been a better choice, but it is what it is. It does mean that we don't have all of the molded detail here, which again is screen accurate, so that's nice. We do get some really nice molded detail inside of the tape deck. We can see all the cogs and things like that, which is really great. There's some nice yellow paint around for the frame. Decepticon symbol. The yellow paint over the blue could have done with another coat. It's just a little too dark, but it isn't too bad. That's a really nice Soundwave head sculpt. I really like that. I like the red paint app for the eyes. It is painted. There is no light piping or anything like that. Not sure if I would have preferred it with light piping or not, but that's really nice. I definitely really do like that head sculpt. We get some more detail down on the legs. That yellow paint again. That yellow paint's a really nice colour here, but it's just a little too dark up there. Get some silver paint. Overall, I think this has got a really nice paint app to him. I don't feel like there's anything missing per se. Everything really does look and feel like the character as he appeared in the film. So there we have our figure. As for accessories, he comes with his mounted shoulder cannon, which just plugs in the top there, and there's some really nice paint apps again on that. I like the red for the missiles. That's been done really well. And then he also comes with his blaster, which does extend out. It's a little awkward to get this one out. There we go. Oh, a little fiddly, you need thinner fingers than I've got. But again, that's been nicely done. I like the silver paint apps for that. And he does get a grip on that as well. For articulation on the figure, his head is on a ball joint and go up that far. You can get it further back if you sort of pull back on this. I don't know if we can disconnect, if it's supposed to disconnect. So if you pull back, you can certainly get that. That's obviously more for transformation, but it is there if you want it. Down that far, but we will get a full 360 turn. Arms come up all the way here. It's got a ratchet hinge on the inside, so we get a nice range of movement there. And then we also get the full turn. Will extend out again, presumably for transformation. So if you want to hinge that, you can get a almost butterfly joint effect. The bicep is on a swivel, elbow all that far, wrist is on a mushroom joint and will rotate, and fingers are articulated at the knuckle. They're all articulated as one, and it appears the finger is posed in such a way that we should maybe be able to get it to pose with, come on, okay, am I missing something? It's going to be very disappointing if this is a Soundwave which can't press its own eject button. I can't really get him in a position where he's pressing his own eject button, which is frustrating and disappointing. Do feel that the ability to press that eject button is essential for posing the figure, so it's a little disappointing that I can't seem to get him into that pose unless I'm missing something. We get a waist rotation. The skirt pieces do move, allowing for the leg to come forward that far or back that far. We get that thigh swivel, hinge at the knee, as I presume for our transformation, the foot will come forward that far. Oh, there is a rocker there. It's quite tight, but there is a rocker there. And I've pushed that in. Okay, I'll leave that for now. We'll be transforming him in a minute. But there's our articulation. He's got a nice couple of accessories. Obviously the other accessories are the 3 figures included. So we get Laserbeak, Ravage and Buzzsaw. So we have our 3 cassette bots in their cassette forms. They look like they're fairly simple transformations. Let's see how they appear on the instructions. Okay, transforming. Okay, so there's some instructions on the back for transforming them. They do appear to be straightforward enough. Let's quickly do this so we can show these off. Okay, so Ravage is fold the head together, then these legs come out, not quite clear if we're supposed to so we twist the body, I think. Then, okay, so yeah, so twist the body, flip those around, flip those around. Bend this back, bend these forward, twist these out, fold them down, and there we have Ravage. He comes with a couple of accessory bits which we'll look at in a minute. And then the birds are fold out the wings, fold down the feet, fold back the wings, and then fold out the head. And again, they have some accessories which we will look at in a minute. So before we move on, I want to discuss the cassette bots and how they look. So Laserbeak and Buzzsaw are obviously pretty much identical bar their colour schemes. You got the cogs for the record here, but you're left with these big gaps here, and their design overall feels quite disappointing. We've had these cassette bots before in other releases. For example, this is Buzzsaw from the Legacy line. So while he's got a lot more molded detail and maybe isn't as screen accurate, you can see here that it transforms really quite nicely and in a similar way. So it's got its back, folds up, legs fold up, and that sort of looks like a cassette. It's missing the cog pieces, but nothing some detail would do. These are the same size. This might be a little thicker, but they're essentially the same size. So I don't understand why Hasbro went with such radical redesigns for these. Here we have Ravage from that Legacy line release. Okay, I'll admit this definitely does look better as a I apologise, as a robot cat. But again, that, as we saw, that cassette ends up looking very much like that. So I'm not quite sure about the redesigns and the fact that they don't quite look like cassettes in their alt form. I'm looking at faff with transforming this now, but yeah, this one looks, you know, very much like this in terms of looking like a cassette. Now you can say that it's because these need to look more representative of their animated counterparts than, say, the legacy ones do, but we've had other animated cassette bots before. This is Rumble, which is, you know, incredibly accurate to how he appeared in the film and the series. We've still got that fold that looks like he's an actual cassette, compared to this where we've got these big gaps here, and it doesn't look or feel like a cassette to me. This feels like a cassette. It feels suitable. It feels right. There's just something missing with these, especially since we seem to have to connect all of their accessories on. So Ravage has a tail which plugs in somewhere. Okay. Oh. Okay, so the tail goes in like that. I will say Ravage has a lot of articulation here. I do like that. Maybe that's why they've ended up the way they are. They do have quite a bit of nice articulation. You can see Ravage has a joint there on the ball joint and a hinge at the back, and then the legs as well. So we can get some nice poses out of him. Having to connect the tail's a little frustrating, but it does add to the figure, as does adding the rockets to the side. So that's all very nice and certainly looks a lot more screen accurate than the other one. So I can understand adding the tail. It's just that robot mode, which alt mode, which looks a little odd in my opinion. Buzzsaw and Laserbeak are the same accessories, so they have this end piece and these two blasters, which then just peg in with the two holes there, which makes them look a lot more screen accurate. It would have been nice if these could have folded into the mold in some way, in the same way the Legacy Laserbeak did, but it certainly does help the figure once it's out like that. Again, my only real gripe with these is that not really looking like a cassette. I just find that a little disappointing. Articulation on these, we get some nice head movements there. The wings will bend down, but you won't go up. So there we have those. So before we move on to transformation, I want to do something that I don't normally do, and I just want to bring in the Legacy Soundwave to quickly compare the two, because as similar as they are incredibly different at the same time. So you can see this one comes in at quite a bit taller than the previous one. In fact, he stands at just over 6.5 inches, where this one is probably about 6 inches. So yeah, this is over 6.5, closer to 7 actually. This one's definitely, so there's about an inch difference between the two, give or take. This one obviously has all that molding I was talking about, which is really, really nice, and I absolutely love that molding and design and everything else they've done with this figure. But that there is definitely a lot more screen accurate in its appearance. I love the brighter colours. The less is definitely more in this instant. The gold works on this figure, whereas the yellow definitely works on that figure. So we do have our two. I love this figure. I think it's a fantastic one, and it would be perfect if they hadn't reused the War for Cybertron mold on the arms. These weird gun bits are annoying, and just detract from this being a near perfect figure. But this one, you can pose it in a way that he's pressing that eject button, where I just can't seem to get this one to do that, unless I am missing something. Oh, this one has double hinged elbow. Double hinge. Ah, there we go. Okay, I stand corrected. You can do it. In fact, this figure has a double hinged elbow, which I hadn't realised. It's a really tight joint. So that adds to the articulation and does allow for you to get him in that iconic pose. Not being able to get him in that pose just seems so wrong. But there we have it. While we've got him like that, we can get one of our tapes. And that will... Do we have a certain way going in? It's a very, very tight fit. There we go. So that fits in. It releases nicely. One of the problems I had with Myonis once, the Legacy one, is once you had a tape in, it tended to catch. This opens really, really nicely. It just is a tight fit. Let's bring it in. Our Legacy does sort. That will also fit if you want it to. And again, it springs open. That is a little looser in the fit. It's a little nicer. And then we have Rumble, who may not actually fit. Oh. If we're not going to transform. See if we can get this. Okay. That's all molded together. There we go. Oh yeah, he does fit. He's a lot tighter than all of the others, but he does fit, and you need to make sure he's transformed 100% exactly, otherwise it won't fit in. But he does fit, and becomes an issue of getting him in and out. He's a little bit tight. This could have done with being a fraction of a millimetre wider, just to let him sit in. But it works. So there we have Soundwave. Now let's look at the actual transformation for the figure. Okay, so let's bring this around. Instructions opened. Let's take a look. Okay. So the first thing is bring out the arms. It has removed the weapon for this, so let's put that to one side and do this. The arms will drop down and fold up and then close up, and the same on the other side. There we go. Then the arms come down. Does anyone remember how he went in the TV? If we can do that. can't quite remember how he went in the TV in the pilot episode. Was it something like that? So you can sort of get him in that. Well, you'll be able to get the head out, but yeah. So I think we can get him in that Cybertronian alt mode if you play around with it. I just can't quite remember how it was exactly. Okay, as we've seen, these back panels swing open. Pull this back, drop the head down, close that up. Then it wants us to bring in our weapons and store the weapons on. So it has the shoulder cannon coming in here, fitting in, and the blaster fitting in like so. Okay, once those are in, the back panels will close up and actually cover those, so it almost looks like batteries, AA batteries. I quite like how they've done that. That makes it look like AA batteries. I'm assuming these aren't going to cover up at the sides or the top. It would have been nice if there's been something to do that, but I think having them actually look like batteries once it's transformed is a nice touch. Right, we then twist the waist around 180 and then so the waist is around 180. Let's see, so we've got to bring the arms back. I missed a step there. There we go. That brings those arms back like that. Then rotate that waist 180. Lift the panel up. Fold out the sides. Moving down to the feet, there's a couple of hinges down here. And you open those up and open up these panels. You drop these foot panels down and rotate the foot around and then lift and tuck it into the leg. Then with those in, you're supposed to push these two back. They've already gotten pushed back during just play and they're awkward to get back out without a little blade or something, but yeah, so you push those back, then close everything back up and turn these 90 degrees. Says nope, done that wrong. Okay, so these panels remain open. Then that rotates outward and rotates outward. Then these fold up like so. There we go. And that plugs in like that. And then the same here. Comes up, plugs that in. This arm comes in. Yeah. this lining up properly. There we go. Plug those in. There's tabs there and there which slide in together, and there is a tab here which slides into the back of the legs there, which gives us that. Then all we have to do is drop the front panel down, and there we have Soundwave in his alt mode. Let's get rid of those for a moment. Bring this back round. So here we have Soundwave in his alt mode, and while this is a completely new mold, the transformation to the figure is almost identical to that previous legacy figure. The arm's still visible on the back, although this one's a lot tidier, I will say that. I still wish that these could hide away somehow, but they do work. They're tidier, so that's something. And I think if you wanted to, will they slide in maybe? Yeah, you can. I don't know if I missed it on the instructions. You can turn the arms around, and this hinge here will peg in, or sorry, that slot will peg in there. So that's a little tidier. It boxes things away quite nicely. Again, I like the idea of boxing away those batteries. I just wish there was a way we could have had a little fold just to hide that top bit. To hide them, that would have been a nice touch. Otherwise, this is a really nice mold. I love those details here. Again, as I said, it would have been nice if we didn't have to have the faux ones and the front panels for the alt modes, but it's not too bad. There's no real new detailing or anything else on this. Everything that's visible in the robot mode is visible in his alt mode, but it looks like a 1980s cassette player, which is what he's supposed to look like, and I think that's a really, really nice touch. And you know, as I said, while this is almost identical in its transformation, I definitely prefer the Studio series. This one has the record battery symbol here with a little bit around the peg to make, or some paint tapped around the peg to make it look like a battery. It would have been nice if we could have had that along here somewhere, but it's again not make or break for me in any way. Overall, I like this. I like the transformation. It's smooth, it's simple. Transforming it back is obviously just a case of reversing everything we've done, and it's easy enough to do. There was nothing fiddly or complex about the transformation at all. I can reach in there now and push those out. Same on this side. Okay, why are you stuck? Come on. It's almost like he's gone. Oh, there we go. I don't know why that became stuck like that, but it did. Push that out, plop that in, twist this around, fold the arms back into their original positions, bring back the head. Okay, so that needs to be down in order to bring back and bring up that head. Come on. There we go. So it's a little bit of fiddly bits trying to get this transformed back. I'll leave those there. I'll just leave that for now. Though the way these push in a little too easy is a little bit annoying to me. That's my only real complaint on this as the figure itself. Overall, I really like the figure. I think it's a fantastic design. It looks identical to how he did in that 86 film. I really like the fact that we get three of the figures. So it appears that the figures kind of just rest on here rather than pegging. One of the things that was possible with this one was that the feet clasped over the arms and held it a little, yeah, probably about as stable actually. It felt like it would have been nice if perhaps these could have been used to actually peg into our bot in some way, but I don't think it's possible in any way for those two. No. So as I said, it would have been nice if there was some way to actually peg him on so that it doesn't knock it off every time you nudge him, but it's not make or break in any way. Yeah, so I like the figure. My only real complaint is the look for these cassette bots. I just feel that their alt modes of looking like cassettes could have been worked just a little bit better. Hide those holes a little bit. Otherwise, this is a great addition to the collection. I'm really glad I've picked him up. And I would highly recommend them. If you are after a 86 or Generation 1 Soundwave, this is definitely the figure to go for. If you're looking for an upgrade to your Legacy line, again, figure to go for. If you're happy with your Legacy figure then, and you're happy with having just one Soundwave in your collection, then yeah, stick with the Legacy line. They're near identical enough that it doesn't necessarily worth double dipping on them. However, this is new enough that it does feel like a different figure to what has come before. Thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Until next time, stay safe. And remember, freedom is a right, not a privilege. Okay, so I was packing away Soundwave or packing away the figure and getting rid of the packaging when I had that, once again, feeling that I hate having to dispose of the packaging when it has such nice artwork. It feels like a shame to just throw that cardboard in the bin, but I can't be storing package after package after package. It's ridiculous. When I suddenly had the thought of Transformer trading cards. Has anyone else had this idea? I can't be the only one who's thought of just cutting out the artwork into a trading card sized piece of art. So I ended up doing that. I don't know if I'm going to do it going forward. I don't know if I'm going to keep these. I'm just going to see, I guess. But I did quite like that idea. It's a way of saving that artwork and keeping a little bit of the, the hard work that the people over at Hasbro go into designing these packages. So there we have it. Thank you for watching.